Welcome to Orion Philosophy, where we explore, discuss and dissect areas of practical philosophy for use in everyday life. When Friedrich Nietzsche wrote of the Übermensch, or Overman, in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he wasn't talking about something that was superhuman. Instead, the Übermensch represents human potential, particularly for those of us who are willing to cross over from the comfortable, easy, mindless acceptance of what a person has been taught and what everyone else believes, and enter into a way of life that creates its own value in a world where traditional morality has begun to crumble and holding on to beliefs of the past no longer makes sense. To better understand the Übermensch, we first need to understand the context of Nietzsche's broader philosophy. In the book Thus Spoke Zarathustra, the idea of the Übermensch is presented as a goal to strive towards, given that a person has the creativity and strength to do so. One needs creativity because of the need to create our own value, and one needs strength because there will very likely be some resistance when going against the grain of traditional values and beliefs. I think it's important to mention that Nietzsche was living in a time when the traditional pillars of society, being religion, morality and philosophy, were beginning to see cracks. His famous declaration that God is dead wasn't so much a statement as it was an observation. It was Nietzsche's way of calling attention to the beginnings of the collapse of old values that, to their credit, had helped to guide humanity for centuries up to that point, but now in the modern world seem to be holding humanity back. With this slow erosion of God and traditional morality, the foundation upon which many of our values have rested had now been removed, and in their place we were left with a world balancing on the brink of nihilism. And by this I mean a world where nothing seemed to matter. In this godless space, Nietzsche proposed the idea of the Übermensch as a potential answer. This idea is not a person but an ideal, a goal that an individual could strive towards. It's an ideal much in the same way as the Stoic sage is an ideal for the Stoics, something that may well be altogether impossible to achieve, but something to nonetheless aim for. This Übermensch is a being which rises above the herd mentality and the slave morality that Nietzsche saw as dominant in society, and we'll explore exactly what he means by these two things in just a second. The path towards this is a path on which we decide new values, new beliefs and new behaviors, and in doing so it would prevent a person from becoming lost in a world which was shedding itself of old values. It is to master one's own destiny, and a force of life that affirms its own existence in the face of nihilism and meaninglessness. Instead of living a life we are taught to live, believing what we're told to believe, and following a path so many have followed before us, we can take this idea of the Übermensch being the creator of values and read into it a little further. One of the more important characteristics of this idea is the ability to create values rather than simply follow those handed down by tradition. Nietzsche argued that most people live according to what he called slave morality. This is a term he used to describe a moral system built on fear, conformity, and legacy, values imposed by society, religion, or other systems, cultures, and groups. In heavy contrast to master morality, this slave morality, as Nietzsche saw it, was born out of the oppressed, the powerless, and the downtrodden. He believed that this slave morality was born out of a reaction and resentment to those with power, self-determination, and strength. Where the powerless were unable to compete with this strength, they developed their own moral system that allowed them to feel morally superior, despite their position. Where master morality celebrates power and excellence, slave morality turns this on its head. It labels strength, ambition, and pride as evil or distasteful, and instead values humility, patience, meekness, and self-sacrifice as the highest virtues. In this way, slave morality turns what was once considered good, the natural expression of strength, into something shameful. At this point, it's important to note that Nietzsche is not criticizing the virtues of humility, patience, or self-sacrifice, nor does he view the downtrodden or less powerful as less than or inferior. This has never been the case, although it is a common misconception. The real issue that he's addressing with regards to the oppressed, or those with less power, is that there is a risk of resentment, and that this resentment can result in herd mentality and slave morality. He is not critiquing the people, he is critiquing the slave morality, which imposes universal values, and he sees universal values as stifling for human potential and creativity. Similarly, there is also a misconception that Nietzsche believes the master mentality to be the ideal, one which favors strength, determination, creativity, and self-assertion. This also is not the case. While traits like self-determination and creativity are preferable in contrast to following universal values set by the masses, which is the main critique with slave morality, in reality Nietzsche is far more interested in the possibility of individuals transcending both systems and creating their own values. And this is where we find the true idea of the Übermensch. The Übermensch, in contrast to much of the herd moralities, does not waste time on resentment or envy. They are not concerned with tearing others down or justifying their existence through comparison, or, as we've seen, conforming to external expectations. Instead, they focus entirely on creation, creating new values, new ways of living, and new possibilities for humanity. We detoured slightly there, but I think the context of these moralities is worth the time. And if we bring ourselves back to the values which are imposed by society, religion, or other cultures or groups, for Nietzsche, these traditional systems not only come with the risk of stifling our individual growth. In some cases, they are deliberately designed to suppress our curiosity, our desire to ask questions, to debate, and our creativity. And in some cases, they can make us feel guilty for our desires, our ambitions, and even our strengths. The Übermensch, on the other hand, examines their beliefs, they examine their traditions, and they examine their values. Like a gardener, it prunes and rids itself of ideas and beliefs which hold it back, nurtures the ones which add value, and plants new ones of its own choice, directed by its own vision. This is where we see a bridge to Nietzsche's concept of the will to power. For Nietzsche, life is, for the most part, about striving, about exerting one's will to grow, to create and overcome obstacles, and to rise above internal barriers, such as anxiety, fear, insecurity, and doubt. To this end, the Übermensch is a path on which a person can exercise their own will to power. It's driven by a desire to continually grow, to break free from the limitations that hold back the herd, and to design its own path through life. Where ordinary people see chaos, the Übermensch sees potential. Where others seek comfort in tradition, the Übermensch finds strength in creating something entirely new. I will add here that the striving isn't about personal gain or domination. It's more to do with a level of mastery over oneself, overcoming the chaos within, to live better lives. Earlier we touched on the idea of nihilism, a word which is generally used to describe the belief that life is meaningless, and that there are no inherent values, morals, or truths in the world around us. The Übermensch, in part, is Nietzsche's response to this problem, a problem which he believed to be a major threat to Western civilization. With the decline of religion and the rise in scientific rationalism, Nietzsche believed that many people would struggle to find meaning in this new way of the world. Without God or any absolute values to guide them, he worried that many people would fall into despair, believing that life has no purpose, that their lives had no meaning. The Übermensch, however, offers an antidote to this risk. Instead of falling to nihilism, a person has the ability to create their own purpose. They may rise above the despair and meaninglessness that comes with the death of God, and find a certain level of freedom that comes with self-creation. The Übermensch is in part an answer to the question, how do we find meaning in a world with no inherent meaning? So how do we become an Übermensch? I believe it's important to recognize that Nietzsche's Übermensch is not a state that one can achieve easily, if at all. Much like the Stoic sage we discussed earlier, the Übermensch is an ideal, a state that shows us our potential. It's something to strive towards, and even if we don't reach it, we will likely be better off than where we were when we started. If indeed we do decide to start down this path, we will find challenges. And many of these challenges will come because it requires us to continuously overcome ourselves. It requires a difficult level of self-examination, the questioning of our beliefs, our values, our biases, and our preconceptions. especially those of which we have adopted from the external world, like those from other people, other groups, other traditions and cultures. It also requires us to leave the comfortable road which is paved with the values and traditions of the past, and venture off into the unknown. All that being said, we can begin with the following. The first step is to break free from the herd mentality, the tendency to conform to societal norms and follow the crowd. Most people, Nietzsche argues, live as part of a herd, adopting the values, beliefs, and expectations handed down by society without ever really questioning them. They live in a state of moral comfort, content to follow the paths set out by tradition, religion, and social expectation. Nietzsche warns, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." Therefore, to truly become an Übermensch, you must first stop seeking validation from others and start living according to your own desires and your own principles. Now, this doesn't simply mean rebelling for the sake of rebellion. It means rejecting the unthinking obedience to established values that are not your own. Fundamentally, the Übermensch is independent. It thinks critically about what they truly believe and value, rather than accepting what society tells them is right and wrong. They question everything, authority, tradition, and as we've seen, even their own beliefs, until they happen upon discovering their authentic self. To achieve this, Nietzsche encourages us to engage in self-reflection. Are your beliefs truly your own, or are they inherited from your family, your religion, or your culture? Are your ambitions driven by societal expectations, or are they rooted in your own desires? The Übermensch is someone who has the courage to confront these uncomfortable questions, and if necessary, reject the beliefs and values that do not resonate with them. To end, Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch isn't just a philosophical idea. For some, it's a call to action. It reminds us of our potential, encourages us to reject the values that no longer serve our needs, and helps us in creating something new. Please feel free to like, share and subscribe, and to promote some discussion, let us know in the comments what Nietzsche's Übermensch means to you.